Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Chicago Techies podcast, a podcast focused on highlighting the voices of Chicago Techies and their experiences. I'm your host, Ceci Fisher-Benitez. Thank you for joining us. On this week's episode, I am joined by Osvaldo Montelongo, founder and CEO of Connect Care Hero. Hey, Osvaldo, thank you so much for joining me in this week's episode of the Chicago Techies podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you about your career trajectory and your experience in tech. I feel like this is a treat because this is the first time I've ever had someone that kind of started their own company and is also Latino. So that's even more exciting for me. So let's start. Why don't we start with your name, your pronouns, where you're from, and obviously your role.
Yep. No, thanks for having me. So I'm Osvaldo Montelongo. I am the CEO and founder of Connect Care Hero. My family's from first generation Latino. My family's from San Luis Potosí, Ciudad Valles, a little small town in Mexico. But I grew up actually in the US. I grew up in Nebraska, out of all places, and then came to Chicago about 10 years ago for school and played a little soccer.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love soccer. I also played a little bit in college. Not to like a big experience level, but at least Division III. So yeah, curious about school. Did you first? I guess what did you study in school, and did you always kind of know that you were going into tech? But let's actually start with the major first. What did you want to study?
So when I chose my school, I actually was so I grew up playing soccer like all my life and loved it. That I was going to be a professional soccer player, like every small kid. And so I went to school, played some soccer, and then throughout that, I kind of got recruited to play at this school for soccer. And then basically there, they asked me like, "What do you want to major in?" And so I kind of said, "Well, I want to do kind of like marketing stuff, but I want to do like around the world." And so they kind of set me up with business marketing and management classes, some international stuff as well. And that's kind of what I majored in, and kind of just took classes that, were strategic to getting to an internship that was actually with a local international business company. And that's kind of what I took originally. So,
on that note, on internships, like how did you kind of work your way to get that first internship with the company?
Yeah. So the school I went to, they had a program that you could actually do, how most people do in their schools, they do this study abroad, thing and go, across the country or across the world. I actually picked one that was called, it was in the city of Chicago. So it was a program called Chicago Semester, and where they basically, you find an internship with the Chicagoland area company. They try to place you in the right, company based off what you want. And I was very specific with what I wanted. I said, I want to do international marketing. And so they looked up and down and found one company that was interested in what I was doing because I spoke Spanish, and they knew I wanted to do international marketing and had an opening. They needed help, and so I applied for it, and it was actually with the company that I ended up eventually getting a full-time job from after I graduated. So.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, most universities have some type of internship help experience, that they kind of connect you with those. It sounds like you were kind of really interested in marketing and what you could do in marketing. Were you already kind of intending to go into tech, or how did that came about? Were you just looking for any kind of role before?
No, so for the marketing role, honestly, I went to school and I just knew I wanted to travel. I really never traveled growing up, and so I was like, I want to do something that's marketing. I think I came in with the mindset. I was like, I grew up poor, so I know how to market to poor people. Kind of was marketing at one point, but as I grew into the space, I was like, well, actually, I think I know how to strategically market stuff. And so I didn't have an envision I would be in tech. And so I was always thinking I was gonna, do this marketing job, global marketing job. So I became a global marketing manager, entry level at first, for an oral care company. And so I was with them. I was in charge of their Latin American division and brands. And so I always tell people I sold toothbrushes across Latin America. And so with that, I was doing that for about 5 years. maybe 4. I was there a total of like 7 or 8, but for 4 years. And then my dad, he was a lot older. He had me at 57 years old. And so in my early 20s, he started getting these like early onsets of dementia. And so I brought him back from Mexico to take care of him here in Chicago by myself. And it just became too much that I had to like I actually had moments I had brought him into work with me, or had him I had an office that faced the window into the parking lot. And I remember I had my dad in the car, and every once in a while he'd like start beeping the horn on the car. And my boss was like, who's out there beeping? I was like, sorry, Marcelo, es mi papá. My dad. And she's like, what is he doing out there? And I was like, he just wanted to come to work. So it's kind of embarrassing as a young professional trying to figure out like how to like have this conversation with your boss at work. And anyway, super understanding at the time. She had him come into my office, have some pictures of my dad in my office, sit at my desk. But that was kind of like, my goal was to actually be in global marketing. It was a good job, really good paying job. Honestly, like I even tell myself now that, that when I jumped full time to my tech company, that I was like, no one else would do this. Like I had a good job, high paying salary, like, now the financial lead for like most of my family. So it's like, how do you give that up for something that's uncertain with a tech startup? And, but it was the kind of that position of my dad, having my experience with my dad. Eventually he had pretty severe dementia. One day he walked out on me, and, it was hard to kind of like, keep him at home without losing him, because I actually did lose him a couple of times. But yeah, hopefully that answers that question a little bit.
Yeah, no, and that's really, it's helpful. I think, obviously being Latino, we have our own cultural expectations, right? Like we as Latino kids of Latino parents, like normally like there's the whole expectation that we are going to be the primary caregivers for them, because there's really not a lot of like visibility into like the assisted giving, like assisted care within our community. But you're leading this charge because it is lived experience, right? Like your dad is struggling, and obviously sometimes we are busy and we don't have the time to be there, especially when it's a very intricate disease, right? Like it requires additional help that we're not able to give. So I think that being kind of like what sparked your like now your mission is something really powerful. I would love to learn a little bit more about Connect Care Hero and like how that whole came up. Obviously you told us the story of how this came about. Now I want to hear a little bit more about what are you going to be focusing on, and what to expect from the product.
Yeah, so obviously that was a very big moment for me, because like you mentioned, like like Latino families, it's like you're always told like you take care of them until their last breath, right? And it's one of those things that I'm first generation. There's like no one here in my family besides my brother, my sister, and my mom in the U.S. Like everyone else is in Mexico. So like who else is going to take care of them when you can't have your cousins or your other extended family like watch over them? And so I was left in a kind of very delicate position, which killed me at the time. And but I learned a lot. So obviously once my dad was in a nursing home, I learned everything in and out about like what's it like to have a loved one in a nursing home. And I saw him every single day for 60 days straight. And I remember I only missed one day, and it was like May 24th, 2000 and I'll say 15 or 14. I can't remember now. But it was one of those things that, it really kind of like hits you hard as a Latino trying to take care of your parents. But I made the focus that I'm going to give them the best experience possible there. So it led me to creating Connect Your Hero, which is a digital platform that powers social engagement for older adults like my dad. And we do this through live interactive programming where communities, nursing homes, and health plans and whatnot can like engage residents, older adults like my dad, with unique cultural experiences such as mariachi sessions, cooking shows that are specifically designed around Latinos, and a variety of other entertainment. Because I knew my dad had dementia, and the only way you can slow down dementia is by being intentional with them. And so Connect Your Hero kind of helps bridge that gap for communities and nursing homes to actually provide intentional engagement through programming. Because I know my dad, he sometimes forgot my name, but if I said, hey dad, tell me about the farm, and then he like remember like at the back of his hand, because he was a farmer for 40 years. So it's one of those things that for me, I learned it straight on, because I was like, I would go to my dad's nursing home and people would be like, oh, are you the grandson? I'm like, no, it's my dad. He goes, oh, no wonder you're here every single day. And it's, it's like, it's me and my dad. That's the only people that are here for us, for each other. So for me, that was kind of what, really drove my passion to kind of continue doing Connect Your Hero. I did it for as a side hustle business for a good majority of 2.5, 3 years. My boss didn't know, my company didn't know. So I was kind of doing it on the side for the longest time. And I always called it Project 83. So I don't really know what it was. And eventually after some time, started picking up more steam, wanted to make it more official. Then I eventually started Connect Your Hero, because we help connect families. We help connect, with experiences and a variety of other things. But yeah, it's been an experience so far. So
yeah, I mean, that's awesome. That's really amazing. I just want to acknowledge how great it is that you basically made an effort to see your dad daily for that long. And when you noted that it was like May 24th that you didn't get to be with him, that hit home, like that hit in the heart, because that was like, oh my God, like, we are so invested in our families. That's really like the number one thing for all of us, that comes first. And I really love seeing that in you, and like, and not losing sight of that, despite like all of the challenges that I'm sure that you've gone through with your dad, and being the two of you alone. I mean, I think it's the product itself sounds like a great tool, and I really wish you the best of luck. I hope that everybody starts picking it up. I want to hear a little bit about your experience with the Latinx Incubator program and then Techstars, but let's start with the Latinx Incubator. How was that program like for you?
Yeah, so I'll start off with my first time getting into like the tech space was in 2017. So this is 2016 was the year I had the idea of Connect Your Hero. In 2017 was the year I actually started building stuff out, because I was more dedicated to it. And at the time, I remember like, I heard about like this place called 1871, and I really didn't like know what it was until a friend introduced me to it. And so I started going there on the free nights. They give, I sneak in with their night weekend pass and just kind of like, pick as much as I could out of it, because obviously it costs money. And so I'd get resources that I could, try to find out who are the Latinos in the space. And eventually, they didn't have at the time Latinx when I first got there, but eventually they announced it and said, hey, we're going to be doing this like inaugural Latinx, incubator. And I was like, the coolest thing. I applied first thing, and came with my idea. And it was at that moment with the first cohort that it was too early for me to jump full time, because again, I was like, the one making the money in my family, and I couldn't be like missing one day a week for 13 weeks. That was just not possible. And my boss obviously didn't know what I was doing. And so I just, it was tough to kind of commit to something like that. So fast forward a couple of years, 2019, by that time I had some customers already with me with my platform, Connect Your Hero, more data points, proving that it was getting more customer traction. And then cohort 6 was announced. And by that time, the current right now director, Liana Brand, she reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in joining this year's cohort? And that I will give them that they're always outreaching, trying to get as much Latino people to come through. And I'm glad they did, because I felt like that time I was like, okay, I'm like having to make excuses at work now that I take quick call as a doctor, but it's really one of my customers. And so I do that so much. And I was like, all right, I need to finally go full time on this, because this is like taking too much of my time, and I'm like lying now and I feel terrible. And yeah, so that was kind of like my first full-time jump. I applied, they accepted me into the program, and I gave my 2 weeks notice to my then at the time new job that I was like quitting after a year at this older global company. And I went full time, and then I went full time in the fall 2019 and did the Latinx program. Awesome experience. Got my feet wet in the space. Learned a ton. Had a lot of great cohort members within that program, which I'm still friends with right now. And we meet regularly. I think they have like happy hours for Latinx, and I was just at one a couple of days ago. But yeah, it was an awesome program for anyone that's interested. Definitely recommend it. So.
Yeah, that I love that program. I mean, I feel like I have a lot of questions about it, but for the most part, I love it. I think it's a really good opportunity for Latinos that are looking to kind of like build, their business idea and really kind of, benefit from that. I used to go to basically every single one of those, one of the demo days for like the first 5. I feel like I stopped going the one that you went.
Oh, 2016. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah,
But I need to go back again. I need to start checking those out because I think there are so many great companies that are coming out of there that it definitely deserves to be checked out.
Yeah.
I know that you also did Techstars, right? Like you were part of or at least in some program. Can you share about that experience? Like how did you came about that opportunity?
Yeah, I remember. So obviously, Techstars is a global accelerator for startups, and it's like kind of like as an early stage startup what you want to get to. Like if you have the Techstars stamp of approval, it means like, hey, you're doing something right, you're onto something. So for me, it was always kind of a dream back in 2017, 2018 when I first learned about Techstars. Us early stage startups in 2019 or 2018 were like, apply to Techstars. If you get in, they might accept you and give you money. And it was a long shot. And obviously, always a dream of mine to be in Techstars because I think they would definitely help me kind of accelerate my business and invest in me. And then by that time, I was like, I can go full time. But yeah, in 2018, I heard about Techstars and it seemed like an awesome program to get into. So come 2019, I had more customer, more feedback, more traction with Connect Your Hero. I applied to Techstars for the first time, and I was like, maybe I'll get in. Long story short, got denied for the first one we applied to, and it was the local one here in Chicago, and which was fine. I think we learned a ton. We learned the interview process. We got connected afterwards with great resources and whatnot, and we still stay connected with the group. And one thing I learned is like, through Techstars, the biggest thing with them is like being connected and keeping communication going. And so we applied the MD at Techstars when we applied for basically said, hey, you should apply for this Techstars Future of Longevity since you're in the senior living space. I think you'd be a perfect fit for it. And as soon as they announced in January 2020, this year, they announced it was the first, Techstars Longevity partnership with Pivotal Ventures, which is a Melinda Gates incubation company. And I was like, wow, like this was made for us. And one of the things people don't know, it's like, Techstars is a highly competitive, super hard to get into. There's so many processes, so many interviews that you go through, and they vet you for the program. And you're one of 10 companies within the cohort that you kind of do basically what we did at Latinx, but at a 10 to 15 times the pace and the material. And so it was an awesome experience. Honestly, we've taken it full strides and taken every single thing we can get out of it. What the biggest thing being, since it was partnered up with the Future of Longevity and that theme, it came with a lot of resources and mentors and experts within the space. So now we have, we can easily pick up the phone or send an email and say, hey, I want to talk to XYZ person that works at this place or has this much, information, and quickly get insights of people that make decisions. And we've been doing that full hand. We just finished the program a couple of days ago, our demo day, and it's been awesome just getting the feedback so far from that. So.
Yeah, that sounds like another great opportunity. And obviously, like, now you're legit, right? Like if you mentioned Techstars, if you get there, you're legit. I've always been really super like curious about what the process is like to receive funding or even just to pitch or ask for funding. It sounds like some of these programs have kind of helped you like navigate that aspect of things. Were you really nervous the first time that you had to pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been asked a current like Latinx, director, Liana, like when I first came my first day, I said, I hate pitching. I hate pitching. And I've been, obviously I was in global marketing, so I did a lot of like meetings and different things, but like pitching your own business, your own baby, like you like keep it so close to you. You're like, don't say anything to it. Like, this is my idea. And I was nervous. I mean, I think I felt comfortable with what I was saying, but I was always kind of like, yeah, I don't want people to, I don't like pitching. Like that was just the mindset I had. And two, for me, there's also this whole like, people forget sometimes like, that I'm first generation and Spanish is my first language. Mm-hmm. And so for me, sometimes it's like, I forget how to pronounce some words in English. So it's like, and so when I get up there and I say something wrong, I'm like, I really get down on myself. I'm like, I didn't say that the correct way. And it's one of those things like, it's like 49-49. Either it's like, I'm really good at both Spanish and then good at English too, but it's like, I can never dominate either. Yeah, pitching was something that obviously Latinx really helped me get over, kind of, because I had to pitch in front of like 400 people on demo day for Latinx, which is crazy in itself because they were pitching to friends and family and some people in the investor in the crowd. But then when you get to Techstars, it's like you're pitching on day one. As soon as you get in the room with people you don't even know, you're like, tell us your business. You're like, So it's like you got to get good at your 10-second, 15-second, 30-second, 1-minute pitch. And obviously it leads up to a 5-minute pitch virtually at the end of the demo day. But it's like you get so good at it over time. So
yeah, I bet that's really nerve-wracking having to deal with all of that. I honestly get that, imagine it. That's I don't think I want to imagine myself pitching things.
I always say like put me like let me pitch to some Spanish people and like I maybe feel more comfortable that way. But again, it's nerve-wracking. I think I'll be honest, like it's never easy, but you get over it. You get better at it. So.
Yeah. And also I just empathize because I also forget English words sometimes, or I mispronounce them half the time. So I totally agree with that feelingness, like a feeling like you messed up, but cultural barriers, like I feel like eventually we will get there.
Also to kind of add to one of your other questions was like, like asking for money, right? Like mm-hmm. It's tough. I don't know if it's just me, but like, I hate asking for money. It's like we've been bootstrapping this whole time up until Techstars, and we've taken their investment. But it's like asking for money is always tough for me, and I don't know if it's like the farmer in me coming out or something. Because my dad was like, no se hacen rancho, and it's tough even till now. Like like it's something that Techstars definitely helps you out. It's like, hey, it's okay to ask, and like so you can grow your business. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important factor, something to think about because similarly, I was raised in that, like, don't ask your tias for money. Don't ask your aunt grandma for money. Like, that's not a thing that we're supposed to be doing, like that's always been kind of like engraved in our minds. So I can see why this can be something that is challenging for you. It's definitely a cultural aspect that, that founders have to think about and kind of like realize that this is something that is going to help grow a company and it's going to help more people. And so there's ways of doing things, and this is definitely one way of doing things. So we need to just remind ourselves that that's an option. I guess on that subject, I guess for you, like what has been one of the most surprising challenges starting your own company that you didn't think it would be a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, what's something that's still a challenge for me, or what for me, I think it was more of knowing when to make that first full-time leap, not only for yourself, for myself, but if you do have co-founders, eventually asking them, hey, are we doing this together? And then kind of having them jump full-time. Because it's still an unknown, right? We're growing the business, but still one of those things like, you never know like what the future will look like, especially in the startup space. There's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and it's like that's the one thing that for me is my thing that I'm most challenged with every day. It's like making sure we have enough profit and revenue and raising in the bank, so we keep doing what we're doing, and which is providing experience for older adults. So.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of mentioned this earlier when when you talked about figuring out when it was time to make that leap, right? To leave your full-time job to start this. And I guess not to make it kind of an official question, like what specifically did you notice that was happening more and more that made you kind of made that decision?
Yeah. For me, it was honestly, we started getting more customers that are paying for our services, our platform. But a lot of it was this whole, like, I mentioned earlier, was this like picking up the call, taking a doctor's appointment, and which is really a customer. And so that for me was like, okay, I'm taking 15 calls a week for my doctor. So it's like, like that was kind of a moment for me. It's like, okay, I gotta definitely, put some time. And I think there's enough revenue to kind of, like for me to go in full time. So that was kind of like my safe guess. For me, I wanted to make sure that was okay, because obviously, again, still from that financial lead, it's kind of hard to say, let me not make, my 6-figure salary anymore and start doing the startup salary. And definitely a difference. So that was mine. It was taking, I knew it was time when I had those 15 calls a week. So
yeah, that's definitely something that you can't lie about, right? Like, are you okay, man? 15 calls with a doctor.
I always say, I was like, I have a lot of cavities, so
that's great. I guess curious to know, like, how, when did you have that conversation with your either co-founder or your, because we actually have a friend in common, and that's your CTO. I used to work with Bob, and he, he's the one who told me more about you and your story, and I actually knew Bob while it was all on your side, when this company was a project. So I feel like I grew with it. So I'm curious, when was that, like that timing when you realized that this is something bigger and we actually do have to make this decision of working together or not? How was that conversation, and were you nervous about it?
Yeah. Always nervous. I mean, those are conversations that, I mean, we're pretty, I mean, Bob, I love Bob. Bob's awesome. He's obviously a co-founder of Connect Hero, and as well as Tornu, another co-founder. And so Bob's our CTO, Tornu's our CMO. So leads all our entertainment vetting and operations. But yeah, it was one of those things that we all chatted way in advance. Actually, we had the first chat about, hey, when will you go full time? Will you go full time if we go into Techstars? Mm-hmm. And so, the thought was that, hey, with the investment we get, we'll at least pay each other's off until we make sure this happens, and we're going to work, to the bone to make sure it takes off and it's successful. We didn't get in the first time around, like I said, to Techstars. So we already had that conversation early on. It was more like, hey, you've been working on this now for a year and a half, 2 years. When we always knew, like, once it had a lot of traction, it could sustain our salaries, then we would definitely, go full time organically. But if a situation like Techstars happened, right, which is what you want to get to kind of accelerate your business much faster, we said, once we applied to Melinda Gates Pivotal Ventures one and Longevity one, we kind of said, like, hey, if we do get into this one, it's going to be a lot more specific to what we need. And most the outcome maybe there's a higher chance for us to actually be successful at the end of it, with more contracts, more leads to investors, and so forth. So we already had that talk beforehand, and it was kind of like, we're all in agreement. As soon as I think we said, if we're in, we'll all jump full time. And it was kind of nice to know that, because obviously they're both successful in their respective fields. And to have them now with, me, Connect Your Hero, I think it really kind of solidifies our team, especially as we go into like investor meetings and, contracts. People, when they hear our background and also our diverse perspectives. I'm first generation Latino, Tornu is first generation Liberian. And then Bob, we always joke around with him, and he's like, I'm Bob. And, he's from Chicago. So it's a very diverse and well-rounded team. And I think that kind of like, I'm happy to say that. So.
Yeah, I see. I definitely noticed that right away. I mean, you guys are like a dream team, right? There's definitely a lot of diversity within your kind of like your leadership already. I really can't imagine like what you guys are going to bring to the table as a whole company when you're established and all, as you already are. I'm just a little quick. What would a little piece of advice you would share with someone that is interested in starting their company but doesn't really know how to start it, or even when the right time is? What would you say?
Yeah, and this is from my global marketing days, and I'll attribute to my bosses there. Oral care days is like, and this is applicable for startups, specifically for startups, but like, be niche at what you do. So like, don't try to solve everything. Solve a key problem, be focused around it, know what the customer journey is and why you're valuable for them. So if you can identify that problem and then it's going to be a much easier path to build something and have someone buy into it, right? Because when you have too many bells and whistles and you're trying to solve every single problem from mental health to I don't know, food, uh, stuff. It's like it's good to have one thing you're solving. I think that's the core of startups, right? It's like you're focusing on one problem, and you know what you're doing and what your mission is. So I think for me is anyone that's trying to get in the space is like try to provide a niche solution to a problem you're solving. So
yeah, I think that's really good advice and incredibly helpful. I guess on that subject of like resources and stuff, what has been kind of like your go-to, or at least a book or either a podcast or whatever source that you prefer to kind of learn so that you can on a specific topic? What do you normally use?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of books that I will say with this much. I'm more of like in life like experience kind of learner, so I've always been. But there's books that I read, like the startup economy. There are different books out there that are just specific to startups. But I actually find the most value is just like through Latinx or through Techstars or just people in the 1871 space, be able to like just pick up the phone or set up a meeting with them and just learn. Hey, I want to learn about this specific thing. What are your thoughts on? And so for me, like that's honestly, a 15-minute, 30-minute call with someone that's specific around a certain thing that I want to learn about is for me like reading an entire book on a subject. So because they kind of tell you, here's what you should avoid, here's what you should do. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. There's like Lean Startup if you want to want me to do some books, but like there's a ton of stuff out there. But for me, I always recommend find someone that knows something or is an expert in a certain field you want. I always open myself up as well for anyone that wants to learn about the startup space and how to do things, what I did wrong and what I should have done probably sooner. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree. I guess on that note, because it can be challenging, right, to sometimes reach out to people. But well, I'm now. I mean, let's talk about your kind of your future goals. Like, what are you hoping for your company, or even just as a person? Individually, your professional development, and then what are your goals for the company as well?
Yeah. So personally, myself, I obviously want to keep getting better at leading our team. The right strategically. I think keeping the environment healthy. I think that's key for me as a leader here to kind of make sure that both Bob and his program, he's actually running an intro program as well. Like that, it's a healthy environment. It's engaging. People want to be, feel the confidence to speak up and give their opinion, and being able to kind of keep that environment going, and as well as obviously professionally growing. So I can, I eventually want to be a leader within the space for Latinos as well. If anyone wants help, they can easily pick up the phone or set a call with meeting with me, because I think I looked for that when I was kind of going through the space, and I think it's there's not a lot of Latinos out there that they're in the tech space, and it's unfortunate because I think there's something scrappy about kind of our approach to kind of tech as well, where I think it'd be good to kind of get more feedback from like upper level tech people, and goals for the company. Obviously, we're growing. We're actually currently doing a raise now that we just did demo day. So my next month and a half is going to be basically raising money so we can scale and hit our goals. So growing our team, and yeah, I think the goal at the end of the day is to provide more diverse entertainment within the senior living space. So
yeah. That's great. And I honestly really admire that, wanting to kind of be a resource for other Latinos out there that are looking to kind of further their goals in other companies. That's awesome. I also tend to set time, aside for people that I might want to connect and have a conversation about their career, because that's also something that I did, that I was looking for when I was trying to get into the industry. So I really admire that. I think as time goes on, you get busier and busier. But I feel like, you as a founder, as a CEO, you're incredibly busy, but your willingness to be a resource for others is really, and I admire that. I think I really appreciate that. I think there's a lot of people that value their time more in other ways, which is fine, that they don't make themselves available for these kind of conversations or coffee chats. But I really I think I'm on your side, where I also admire that and would want to continue doing that, even as I grow in my roles. So that's great. I wanted to note if you are aware of Chingona Ventures.
I am aware of Chingona Ventures. There, yeah, I know Samara. Big fan of her. So it's definitely, she's doing awesome stuff over there, and I think it's admirable that she's kind of leading the charge in the venture space as well. I think it's big fan of her. So nothing but great stuff.
Yeah, same here. Definitely a fangirl. I actually just reached out recently because we want to do an event with her in January for Latinx in Tech. We want to have a fireside chat with her. So I've been in kind of like.
She would be perfect. I mean, she's obviously a lead example for the, Latina women here in the VC space, but just in general, I think she's, from just the VC space and her approach, I think is awesome because it's very candid, constructive, and yet, helps you move the needle forward. So
for sure, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess on the spirit of connecting too, how can people connect with you? Do you have an email address? Do you prefer LinkedIn?
Yeah. Anyone can reach out to me at Osvaldo at connectcarehero.com. And that's Osvaldo with the V. So anyone can reach out, say you want to have some chat, I'll send you my calendar. Weekends are usually more open, but anytime I'll make it work. So.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely put all of those notes too on the show notes if people want to, so they can have access to it.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for being part of the show. This was great. I know you're busy, so I really appreciate you taking it on.
Oh yeah, me. Anytime you need more, let me know, and I can send to our new one next if you want. So.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate this. So thank you so much again. Say hi to Bob. I'll definitely stay in touch. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Chicago Techies podcast. If you enjoyed listening, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. Let's continue the conversation on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us at Chicago Techies on all social media channels. Thank you again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.